Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord?
Station 1, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. A reading from Matthew, the 26th chapter, verses 36 through 41. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane. He said to the disciples, "Stay here while I go and pray over there." When he took Peter, Zebedee's 2 sons, he began to feel sad and anxious. Then he said to them, "I am very sad, and as if I am dying. Stay here and keep alert with me." Then he went a short distance further and fell on his face and prayed, "Father, if it's possible, take this cup of suffering away from me. However, not what I want, but what you want." He came back to the disciples and found them sleeping. He said to Peter, "Couldn't you stay alert 1 hour with me? Stay alert and pray so that you won't give in to temptation. The spirit is eager, but the flesh is weak." During this time, I invite you to think of someone in your life, someone who's going through something exceptionally hard right now. And I want you to take a few moments to take a piece of paper and on that to write a prayer for them as we continue.
Station 2, Jesus is betrayed by Judas. Reading from Mark 14, verses 43 to 46. Suddenly, while Jesus was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, came with a mob carrying swords and clubs. They had been sent by the chief priests, legal experts, and elders. His betrayer had given them a sign: "Arrest the man I kiss and take him away under guard." As soon as he got there, Judas said to Jesus, "Rabbi." Then he kissed him. Then they came and grabbed Jesus and arrested him. Again and again, we betray one another and God. We confess our part in the fragmentation of the human family, and we lament our brokenness. I would invite you to take the prayer that you just wrote, and I would invite you to rip it.
Station 3, Jesus is denied by Peter. A reading from Matthew 26, verses 69 through 75. All this time, Peter was sitting out in the courtyard. One servant girl came up to him and said, "You were with Jesus, the Galilean." In front of everybody there, he denied it. "I don't know what you're talking about." As he moved over towards the gate, someone else said to the people there, "This man was with Jesus the Nazarene." Again, he denied it, salting his denial with an oath. "I swear, I never laid eyes on the man." Shortly after that, some bystanders approached Peter. "You've got to be one of them. Your accent gives you away." Then he got really nervous and swore, "I don't know that man." Just then a rooster crowed. Peter remembered what Jesus had said, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." He went out and cried and cried and cried. The good that we do not do. Even when we are not willfully malicious, we fail the human family through our fear and timidity. We neglect to stand up for what's right, to come to another's aid when they cry out. Sometimes we just don't want to be bothered with the world's ails. We lament that others suffer when we seek self-preservation. I'm going to invite you to take that prayer that you just tore up and to tear it into even smaller pieces.
Station 4. Jesus is judged by Pontius Pilate. I'll be reading from Mark chapter 15, verses 1 through 5 and 15. At daybreak, the chief priests, with the elders and legal experts, formed a plan. They bound Jesus, led him away, and turned him over to Pilate. Pilate questioned him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus replied, "That's what you say." The chief priests were accusing him of many things. Pilate asked him again, "Aren't you going to answer? What about all these accusations?" But Jesus gave no more answers, so that Pilate marveled. Pilate wanted to satisfy the crowd, so he released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus whipped, then handed him over to be crucified. Kennedy Brewer was sentenced to death by the state of Mississippi for a murder he did not commit. Though DNA evidence overturned his conviction, prosecutors intended to retry him, and he remained incarcerated for 5 more years before his release. Habib Wahir Abdal served 16 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. He was exonerated after DNA evidence ruled him out as a suspect. 6 years later, he passed away. In 1983, George Allen Jr. was wrongly convicted of capital murder, rape, sodomy, and first-degree burglary. He served 30 years of a 95-year sentence before being exonerated. He died 3 years later. Again and again, our lips and laws bear false witness against our neighbors. Holy One, save us from this appetite for justice and turn our hearts towards truth.
Station 5. Jesus is scourged at the pillar and crowned with thorns. A reading from the book of John, chapter 19, verses 1 through 3. Then Pilate had Jesus taken and whipped. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put them on his head, and dressed him in a purple robe. Over and over they went up to him and said, "Greetings, King of the Jews," and they slapped him in the face. I invite you to take that piece of paper with a prayer that you've torn into pieces and to try to put it back together. Take some time to find where those pieces fit together. And when you've put it back together as much as you can, take a moment to contemplate it, to think of the scarring on the paper. What feelings are evoked when you see the fragmenting and the violence done to something you created with such love and care?
Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to the tree?
Station 6. Jesus is crucified. Reading from John 19:16 through 22. The soldiers took Jesus prisoner. Carrying his cross by himself, he went out to a place called Skull Place, in Aramaic, Golgotha. That's where they crucified him, and 2 others with him, one on each side, and Jesus in the middle. Pilate had a public notice written and posted on the cross. It read, "Jesus the Nazarene, King of the Jews." Many of the Jews read this sign, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Aramaic, Latin, and Greek. Therefore, the Jewish priests complained to Pilate, "Don't write the King of the Jews." But this man said, "I am the King of the Jews." Pilate answered, "What I have written, I have written." Think for a moment about who Jesus is to you. What would you write on a sign above his cross?
Station 7. Jesus promises his kingdom to a thief. A reading from Luke chapter 23, verses 39 through 43. One of the criminals hanging alongside cursed him, "Some Messiah you are. Save yourself. Save us." But the other one made him shut up. "Have you no fear of God? You're getting the same as him. We deserve this, but not him. He did nothing to deserve this." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you enter into your kingdom." He said, "Don't worry, I will. Today you will join me in paradise." The last words of Justin Hall, executed by the state of Texas on November 6, 2019. Yeah, I want to address the Roundtree family and apologize for the pain and suffering I caused. And to the Diaz family, that I had to put you through this. It should have never happened. And to my mom and Morella, I love you, and I'm going to miss you all. I'm ready. The last words of Arturo Diaz, executed by the state of Texas on September 26, 2013. I hope that this serves as an example to the youngsters. Think about it before you make a bad decision. Let's go, Warden. I'm ready. The last words of George Whitaker III, executed by the state of Texas on November 12, 2018. First off, I'd like to say to Mr. and Mrs. Carrier, I apologize for your pain and suffering. I pray, Lord, please forgive me.
Station 8. Jesus speaks to his mother and the beloved disciple. I'll be reading from John chapter 19, verses 25 through 27. Jesus' mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene stood near the cross. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that time on, this disciple took her into his home. Who is my mother? Those who suffer the greatest losses, yet commit to doing the greatest good. Who are my siblings? Those who bind our wounds in time of need. To whom must we turn our attention? To the vulnerable and marginalized. To those who are in the crosshairs of racism, xenophobia, food insecurity, exploitation, homophobia, transphobia, and discrimination. To the neighbors we have yet to fully behold. Again and again, Jesus calls us to see one another and to be a family.
Station 9, Jesus dies on the cross. A reading from the book of Luke, chapter 23, verses 44 through 46. It was about noon, and the darkness covered the whole earth until about 3 o'clock, when the sun stopped shining. Then the curtain in the sanctuary tore down the middle. Crying out in a loud voice, Jesus said, "Father, into your hands I entrust my life." After he said this, he breathed for the last time. I can't breathe.
Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they laid him in the tomb?
Station 10. Jesus is placed in the tomb. Reading from Matthew 27, 57 through 60. That evening, a man named Joseph came. He was a rich man from Arimathea who had become a disciple of Jesus. He came to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Pilate gave him permission to take it. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had carved out of the rock. After, he rolled a large stone at the door of the tomb, and then he went away. Do not look away. Do not rush to redeem this violence. Do not carry on as if nothing is wrong. Grieve this, mourn this, sit with this. And if you cannot, sit and mourn with those who mourn. Grieve with those who grieve. Go in peace, understanding that peace is not the absence of tension, but the presence of justice. May God's Spirit direct you to create the kind of justice that was denied to Jesus on this day. Amen.
Were you there when the sun refused to shine? Were you there when the sun refused to shine? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when the sun refused to shine?